I am starting. Continue. Okay, so those of you who may have missed the hand conversation, Devin just told me that if you, well, first of all, let's try to rename ourselves, right? If we have a role. And I tried naming myself, and when I went to the three dots on the upper right, I saw this hand. So you're gonna see, if you see this hand, that means you can now move that square of that profile of that person to somewhere else. Anyway, so if you're wondering what that hand is. Anyway, welcome everybody. Happy Friday. And I am going to pass this over to our wonderful Toastmaster today. Please welcome Devin.
Thank you. Excited to be your Toastmaster today. Just get some of the housekeeping out of the way. I think we have all of our roles accounted for, so we'll just go down the list so everybody knows who's doing what. Paul is our all counter today. Brooke is our grammarian. Deanna will be our timer. So if you're a speaker, table topics evaluator, make sure you can see Deanna's screen. Stacy's our general evaluator. Megan's our watcher. And Debbie is our joke master of the day. Now, unfortunately, Adrienne is sick and had to cancel her speech at the last minute. So Jesse, you are actually off the hook today.
I am. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So you get to sit back and relax a little. But we'll have Pat as one of our speakers, and Lucia will be Pat's evaluator. And then Charles will lead us through table topics. And let's see, do we have any guests today? Doesn't look like it. So we won't go through the detailed roles. Nope. Oh, Corey's here. Hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Welcome.
If you need any roles, let me know.
Okay, I think we actually are full today, which is exciting. That's what we like to see. So our theme for the day, and I put the agenda in the chat box in case you didn't see the email, because I'm sorry it did come out a little late this morning. But our theme today is historical figures. So the month of February, we have both President's Day, Black History Month, and we're heading into March, which is Women's History Month. So that is our theme of the day. And the word of the day is aspire, which is to seek to attain or accomplish a particular goal. So look to incorporate that into your table topics answers a little bit later. Now, because Adrienne couldn't join us, I thought maybe we would do something a little bit different. And I was going to just talk about some historical figures, but instead I'm going to show a video of a TED Talk. And this was the youth TEDx. It was really inspirational. And I think it would be great for us to see, because I know a lot of us have goals of being, on a stage speaking, a really well-crafted presentation. It's only about 7 minutes, so it'll kind of take the spot of our speaker one today. And it's on Black History is American History. So now let's see if the technology will work with us today. Okay, so when I share this, if you can't hear it, just let me know. Let's see what happens.
How do we define Black history? Is it a plethora of stories about slavery confined to a single 28-day or 29-day month? Is it a watered-down, 2-hour version of what the Black experience is really like? Or does it look like your tired peers in your 9th grade social studies class complaining to you about how exhausting it is to be learning about Dr. King for the 10th time since 2nd grade? In light of our current socio-political climate, the need for non-conventional Black stories to be integrated into American history and English curricula is at its highest, because they convey to students the adversity African Americans face on a day-to-day basis, and how several of them have learned to create and innovate in spite of this. Now, I was raised in an environment where several people I was close to didn't look like me. My mother is a Pacific Islander, my father is Black, and for all my life, we've lived in an area populated by a small minority of Black family, friends, and overall students. In school, we were taught lessons about several European inventors and innovators like Leonardo da Vinci, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, Susan B. Anthony, Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln, the list goes on. I could never necessarily fit myself into these narratives solely because they were presented through a lens that I could not personally identify with, and they didn't feature individuals whose stories even vaguely resembled my own. Now, granted, we would learn about Dr. King and Rosa Parks when February rolled around out of the school's own obligation, but it gave me the impression that all people of color have been doing for these past few centuries is fight for their basic human rights and do nothing else but protest the white patriarchy, and that the world only held one man and one woman responsible for paving the way for the civil rights movement. I wasn't exposed to the idea that people of country could be artists, inventors, musicians, until I researched this realm of learning in my free time. I had no idea what Black history looked like until I became aware of the struggle in which several Black artists and innovators' voices go unheard or masked. Take Shirley Chisholm, for example. In 1968, she became the first African-American woman to enter Congress and eventually seek a presidential nomination in the United States, despite housing an underfunded campaign and being restricted from participating in any televised primary debates on a discriminatory basis. Chisholm managed to enter 12 primaries and accumulate 152 delegate votes during her run, due to support from African Americans, women, and other allies from across the nation. Her story is solely representative of one's resilience as a person of color in America and as a woman in America. Then we have Lewis Latimer, a brilliant inventor and engineer. In 1881, he collaborated with Hiram Maxim and Thomas Edison in order to invent the light bulb. Latimer himself created the carbon filament, which is a crucial component of the light bulb, and although it may seem insignificant, his contribution to this invention paved the way for one of the most groundbreaking devices in history, which is why our history textbook should continually recognize him for the vital role he played. Finally, there is Jacob Lawrence, a highly renowned artist due to his paintings which depict the several everyday narratives of African Americans and historical figures. After developing an art style which showcased the overall vibrancy and diversity of Black neighborhoods, Lawrence went on to become the first African American represented by a New York gallery in 1941. During a period of widespread hatred and bigotry within our country, this man was able to display the extent of his creativity to the world, despite being considered far from capable of doing so. If we as a society are hesitant to create a push for more diversity in our English and history curricula, it creates a potential divide in what certain students feel they can and cannot be, and it limits what they feel is possible to achieve as individuals, all because of the fact that several educators failed to shed light on the many contributions made by African Americans throughout history. And although it may seem although nearly impossible to integrate the teaching of Black history in all schools nationwide, several educators and teachers have begun to implement it into their own individual curricula as a first step, to name a few. We have Jamila Pitts, a former English teacher from Harlem, Manhattan, who utilized the Harlem Renaissance in order to open up her students to a wide variety of African American narratives and how they have taken strides to showcase Black creativity from the 20s to the mid-30s. Mike Cackley, a former social studies and English teacher who chose not only to give a brief lesson on the civil rights movement during Black History Month, but integrated lessons about African Americans in the context of war and foreign policy discussed in his class. And Mrs. Zane Stearman, an English and avid teacher here at Mission Vista who strives to incorporate Black literature by figures such as Langston Hughes and Martin Luther King Jr. in order to demonstrate their creative brilliance to her students. Hearing Black stories not only sparks inspiration in the minds of young Black students, but it imbues a sense of pride in them, allowing them to come home and tell their parents, hey, they look like me, when referring to brilliant engineers, writers, doctors, lawyers, etc., who've essentially paved a way for the youth of this generation to live in prosperity and work toward an overall state of solidarity in American culture. Because Black history is American history. This country we live in, the soil we walk on, and even several devices we use day to day originated from the minds of several Black innovators. In the near future, I want young Black boys and girls to be able to sit in their history classes and take part in a curriculum that features the stories of people like Shirley Chisholm and Lewis Latimer. The youth of this generation should have the ability to skim through their English and history textbooks to reveal several people who they feel they can empathize with, people they can strive to become. And with this newfound knowledge of the great minds that came before, students of color throughout the country can reach their full potential and work toward creating a better future for our nation. In turn, this can certainly benefit the worldview of other people of color as well as non-people of color in America, because our country is a monumental blend of identities, even extending outside of the boundaries of a single race. Incorporating Black stories simply opens up discussion regarding the people of color as a whole, provoking questions among educators such as, what can I do to contribute to breaking racial stereotypes? Or how can I convey to students that success does not align with a single ethnic origin? By incorporating these ideas within a classroom setting, our schools would be taking a step toward overall acceptance and solidarity by showing students that historical triumphs can be made by individuals of any origin. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I wanted to show that because I thought, well, I don't know about you, but I aspire to be able to stand on a stage like that and give a well-crafted presentation like her. And she's a sophomore in high school. That's crazy. I was so not where she is when I was 16. But I think some of the things I did also notice, just also for speech crafting and for our practice, was there was a point in the speech where she lost her place a little bit, or she got a little hung up. But if you notice, she didn't start to try to fill it with filler words and that kind of thing. She just took a beat, took a breath, I imagine, and got back on track. So it's just great. If you like watching these kind of things, the TEDx series are great for inspiration and to pick up more tips on crafting speeches. So next, before we jump into our prepared speech for the day, I would love to have Debbie come up and give us her joke. And if you'd like to unmute so she can hear our laughter, that would be great.
Thank you, Devin. 3 guys are waiting to have an interview. So the first one goes in and he does great. He's feeling so good. He's sure he's getting good at the job. And the interviewer says to him, that's great. I just have one more question for you. Do you notice anything strange about me? And the guy goes, yeah, man, you don't have any ears. And he goes, I'm sorry. I'm very sensitive about my ears. Get out of my office. So he leaves. Second guy comes in. This guy does even better. He does so well. He talks the salary up $20,000 a year. He's stoked. And then the man asks him, do you notice anything strange about me? And he goes, well, you don't have any ears. Guy's like, I'm sorry. I'm just too sensitive about that. You're going to have to leave. So before the third guy goes in, the 2 guys catch him and go, hey, no matter what you do, don't mention his ears. So the third guy goes in and he also has a really good interview and he's really happy. And the interviewer says to him, okay, I have just one last question. Do you notice anything about me? And the guy looks at him and he goes, you wear contact lenses. And the man goes, wow, that's really perceptive of you. I can't believe you noticed. And he goes, well, you sure as hell couldn't wear glasses.
Very good.
Very good. Very well told.
That was very good, Debbie. Thank
I
you.
thought he was going to say pardon, because the other guy didn't either. So you fooled me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So now we are going to welcome Pat up to the stage. Pat is on level 3, project 1, connect with storytelling. So the purpose of his project today is to practice a story within a speech for us. So the title of his speech is Once Upon a Time. Deanna, the time is 7 to 9 minutes. Please help me welcome Pat.
Thank you, Devin. Why do we like stories?
I'll bet it's the same reason we like roller coasters. Roller coasters have unexpected turns and twists. They might be a little risky. We don't know what's going to happen. And just like a roller coaster, there's a chance you might break your leg. With stories, there's a chance you might break your heart. A good story pulls you in. It awakens your senses. It inspires you, takes you on a journey. What is it about Cinderella or Luke Skywalker that captures our attention? I believe the stories of conflict and struggle, they resonate with us because we all have conflict out in the world. We all have struggles within ourselves. I'm going to tell a few stories and try to break down some of the elements and some of the science of how stories affect us. I'll talk about how giving speeches and telling our stories is good medicine. I learned that for a great story, you need to create 3 emotions. Let me share my screen. Where'd it go? Oh, that's not it. Oh, well, I'll just move on. The 3 emotions are, you need to create suspense, which releases dopamine in your body. You need to create empathy, which releases oxytocin in your body. And you need to create laughter, which releases endorphins in your body. Now, suspense is like a cliffhanger moment when you don't know what's going to happen. It's what keeps you, the brain releases dopamine when there's suspense. It helps you to remember things in a better way. So what does dopamine feel like? Well, about 10 years ago, I was in a community theater group and we were rehearsing for a show coming up. We had several shows and we were rehearsing for weeks. So we would read through our lines. We would practice blocking. We would practice rehearsing with our props and we would speed through our lines. We would do everything. We create this muscle memory where you just automatically know what you're going to say next or how you're going to interact. Occasionally, people would forget their lines on stage. But usually others would ad lib or pick up a line, skip ahead to help you out. So on this occasion, it was opening night. I was the lead character in a play called Bye Bye Birdie. It's a 1950s comedy. And my character, Albert, and my fiance, Rosie, we were discussing who's going to be the next pop star of that decade. And his name was Conrad Birdie. So in the middle of the scene, I look up at Rosie. I'm seated at a desk, and she has this blank look on her face. And I realize I must have skipped ahead, and I threw her off. And she's looking at me to kind of save the scene, to move on. And there's about 200 people in the crowd. So I look out at the crowd, I look up at Rosie, I look at the director off stage, and you could hear a pin drop in that moment. I was nervous. I looked at the floor, it was a very shiny wood floor, and it started to get blurry. I could feel the beads of sweat pouring out of my forehead. So what do you think happened next? If I don't tell you, is that annoying? I'm not going to tell you. I just wanted to prove to you what it feels like with high dopamine. Would you say that your focus was increased? Would you say that your attention was increased? You probably created a whole picture of what that stage looked like, what that floor looked like, the big curtain. That feeling you had is dopamine. You make dopamine by creating a cliffhanger. But all great storytelling creates dopamine because it's something we're waiting for, we're expecting. That's what keeps us turning the pages in books or keeps us binge watching another episode of Breaking Bad. So the next emotion you have to create is empathy. It releases oxytocin in your body. You become more generous, more trusting, and you bond to the storyteller. It was about 364 days after my dad had passed. I was planning to hang out with my family, and the next day I wasn't knowing how to feel or what to expect, but I wanted to do something special, and I wanted to kind of move forward and keep a connection with my dad. Recently I scored a grandfather clock, and it was one of those old clocks you crank with a key every couple days. And I tested it and it worked. But after a few months, I stopped cranking it and I put it on Craigslist. Somebody messaged me about it and they said, "Hey, how often do you have to crank it?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. Let me try." And it wasn't working. I couldn't figure it out. I was curious. But, they flaked out and weren't interested. And so that night I was kind of sitting in my kitchen right next to the clock, and I was kind of sad, and I leaned against it, and I just sat there for a second, and then I went into the other room to read, and about 10 minutes later I hear this ching chong ching chong, and I was like, what is that? And I went out and the clock was working, and I was kind of like amazed. I was like, it was like around midnight. It was like, a year after my dad passed. And I was like, what's going on? Now I realize that by bumping it, I had kind of jump started it. I got the pendulum swinging. So now I know you can't just crank it. You have to also kind of jump start it to get it to work. Some have weights that you pull. But at the time I was like, oh, this is really special. My dad's, having a connection. I go to grief support groups and I talk about, my dad to kind of handle that. But right now you've got higher levels of oxytocin in your blood. You're kind of connected to me. You whether you want it or not, it means you feel more human, more relaxed. You're bonded to me. You do that by creating empathy for a character. The next emotion is laughter. I'll try. Why do you think Yoda is such a good gardener? Because he's got a green thumb. Okay, I'll try another one. How does Darth Vader like his toast? A little on the dark side. When you make people laugh, you release endorphins and they become more relaxed, more creative. So recently I went out to the desert to learn about a friend's Native American, his family and his group. I watched them gather around the bonfire and they sing songs. These songs might be thousands of years old. And they talk about what they call the two paths in life, called the red road and the black road. The black road is wide. There's no obstacles, no dragons to face. It's easy. The red road is narrow. It's hard, has deep canyons and high cliffs. It's scary. It takes courage. In life, it doesn't matter if you slay the dragon or you find the Holy Grail, because every day you get out of bed, you show up, and you bring back a story. You return with something different than what you started with. And we all know how our story ends. Eventually, we're going to die. We're all going to be dust, ashes, like in that bonfire. In the face of that truth, the only thing that we really have is our amazing, thrilling stories, our roller coasters. Every time you get up and give a speech, you're saying, hey, I may go off the tracks, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to follow my heart. And that story will live on forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was wonderful. Now take 1 minute to write Pat's speech evaluation. You can either put it in the private chat message, or if you'd like to email him, Pat, if you could pop your email in the chat, that would be great. Okay, and as you're starting to wrap that up, Deanna, if we could get a timer's report for Pat's speech, please.
Pat went 9 minutes and 54 seconds. So I think that's not qualifying, right? Because 7 to 9 minutes. So I think it's 30 seconds after would be disqualified. So since it's 9:54, then yeah, not qualified.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'd like to welcome Stacy as the general evaluator to introduce the evaluation portion of the meeting. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you, Devin. I would like to introduce our second evaluator for our second speech, even though we didn't have the first one. So our second evaluator is Lucille. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Pat, thank you so much for that story. I love the way you opened. You had a good opening and you opened it with a question. You tied that question to something that is vivid that we can, roller coaster. Of course, we all know what that is and we can relate to that. And you really engage us by doing that. I personally learned a lot from you because storytelling is not something that I like to do. And so with you giving us some information about what storytelling, what's needed in the storytelling, you need to have empathy, laughter, suspense, and all that. That is really good to know. And I learned from you. So thank you for that. You informed us, you entertained us with a joke and a laughter and some sad story. You did excellent. You did so great on that, doing a storytelling within a speech. You might want to drink a little water because I noticed that you're starting to get kind of dry. So there's a little bit of a smacking noise, but that's very minor. One thing that I like is that if you wanted to do a PowerPoint and you did practice a little bit for it, somehow you could not launch it. And so you just said, go ahead, let's just continue on without that. So you picked yourself up, you got a little rattle, but you move on. In the beginning of your speech, you were kind of nervous, but once you started, you were going and you were comfortable. What I like to see, and I'm sorry, to challenge yourself, what I like to see more of is just practice. If you need to do a PowerPoint, practice a little bit before the speech, and also just time yourself as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucille. That concludes our evaluation. So I will turn it back to our Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Deanna, can we get the timer's report for Lucille, please?
2:08 qualified.
Great, thank you. And now we're at the table topics portion of the meeting. So please help me welcome Charles. Charles, you can take us all the way to 12:45. So it's a good amount of time for questions.
February is an amazing month because it's two of the biggest historical events that happen. First, it's the President's Day holidays where we commemorate all the presidents, and we also have Black History Month, which means a lot to me and my family. The history of Black History Month, actually, it started as a Black History Week in February, and it was actually the week that Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln were born. And it ended up growing into a full month in the 20th century. The word of the day is aspire or aspiration. And as Brooke has the sign up, it's to seek or attain or accomplish. I can't see that. Particular goals. And this is really a big thinking table topics. Please feel welcome to be aspirational in your answers. I'll begin with the first president, George Washington. George Washington was the first president of the United States, and he was very popular. In fact, he was so popular with the people who were enslaved and of African descent that currently it is the blackest name in America. 90% of the people who have the name Washington in their name are African American. Looking at your family tree, who is an inspirational person or a last name that you feel a certain pride of? Jesse, you want to tell us about that person?
Sure, thank you. I think the person that comes to my mind is my Uncle Ted Olson, and that's Olson. He was my mom's brother, and I also aspire to a lot of his qualities because he was always so calm, and he had this nice big deep voice, and he spoke rather slowly, and he always had so much love and acceptance, you know. And as I get older, and from things I've learned in classes I've taken, everybody wants to be loved and accepted for who they are, right? I mean, we all do. And when we can do that for someone else, and especially a little kid, it is very inspiring as well as aspiring. And that's who I think of is my Uncle Ted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And just for everyone, we are taking the verb, noun, the verb and noun form of aspire. Let's go with the second president we'll be highlighting, James Madison. Most of the early presidents of the United States were slave owners, and they have very diverse stories. One of the most interesting stories is that of Paul Jennings. Paul Jennings was the personal attendant of James Madison and actually was with him when he died. He learned to read and write, which was very rare at the time. He, believe it or not, wrote the first presidential autobiography, and he's known throughout history for that. Angeles, can you tell us about an inspirational autobiography or biography that you've read?
Thank you, Charles. My mind is blank on any autobiographies at the moment. When I was younger, I used to like reading autobiographies, especially like presidents and like public figures. But I can't think of any at the moment. There is one book, it's a fiction book, but it relates to me and to many people like from me, like myself, who came from Mexico, because it's like it has very truthful things in it, even though it's a fiction book. It's called Esperanza Rising. It's about a small girl whose house, who they had to flee Mexico because I think it was like cartel stuff or something like that. And I mean, there was like a lot of violence, and she came here with her mom under like some migrant agricultural work or something like that. And that's like one of the books that has stayed with me throughout my whole life, that I always look up, like read and like referencing, because there, even though that little girl went through so much, like there were so many obstacles, and like myself, I had many obstacles throughout my life, and like I relate to it. And I mean, I aspire to, like, that book aspires me to like be a role model to other kids like myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Angeles. John Quincy Adams was the sixth president, and for the most part, his term was pretty uneventful. However, after he served as president, he came out of retirement and was an attorney who was able to secure the freedom of slaves who rebelled from the ship, the Amistad. It was a very unique case because he won it despite having a court that was pretty much stacked with pro-slavery judges. Angel, can you tell us about someone who has done much more after they formally retired with their lives?
Thank you for that question, Charles. Someone has done more after they've retired. That's a little bit an anathema of a question for me, because if they've retired, they wouldn't be doing anything. So by definition, if they're still doing a lot, I wouldn't consider them retired. My father retired from his job at British Airways and was about 43 and went on to do a lot of other things. Among other things, he was a chess master, an amazing person who never stopped doing things. I kind of was still in the question before, though, when you were talking about biographies, autobiographies, and I have here a brick that my friend gave me, he's convinced I want to read all about Churchill. And apparently he really never retired. He went on and on and on until he was kicked out of government because he couldn't really do anything anymore. I don't know if I'm retired. Technically I'm retired. I started drawing my pension last year, but I'm about to open a new business and I want to open a YouTube channel. So perhaps I'll do a lot more things after I've technically retired. But the way I look at it, darling, I aspire to the fact that if you're alive, you're not retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. That's great. When most people think of presidents and African Americans, the first person that comes to mind is Abraham Lincoln. And when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, he set in motion the freedom for pretty much all African Americans. It was by far the biggest decision, I believe, of the 19th century. Corey, what would you say is the biggest decision that a president has made in the 20th century?
Thank you for that question. That's a tough question. I kind of want the other questions. I would say the biggest change, I guess, that a president has made in the 20th century. I don't know if it was a decision or actually what it was, but electing Obama, the first Black president, I think was a big step in the right direction for the United States. And really, United States has the word united in it. And I really think that all people, no matter what color, we're united. And that's what makes the United States great. So I think that was a big step forward as far as the 20th century. All the questions that you've been asking, which I really wanted to talk about, have been dealing with legacy and how you leave a legacy. The people that really make a difference leave a legacy. And I think that if you want to leave a legacy, helping others achieve success is a really good way to do that. And I aspire to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th president of the United States. Most people know him from being a Civil War general for the Union Army. However, when he was elected president, he oversaw the signing of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, the ratification, of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, which guaranteed the right to vote. It was probably one of the most pivotal things at the time because so many people were not even considered people in that time period. Megan, can you tell us what the right to vote means for you?
Unmute yourself, Megan.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that question, Charles. Sorry if I hurt anyone. Well, I don't care. I am sorry. Well, I am a Democrat, and I believe that it is just so important for the fact that everyone can vote. Like Corey said about us all being united, I think that we are united only because everyone has the ability to vote. And the women, I think it was the 18th Amendment, 17th or 18th Amendment, gave us the right to vote, which, I think that is making us all united. And that is, the only thing is our dogs aren't allowed to vote, but we are all united. And I think that it is great that we all vote. And I aspire for all humans who live in the United States of America to have that ability. That will lead us united. Or keep us united. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. That was great. Now we jump into the 20th century. And President Harry S. Truman, through an executive order, Executive Order 9981, unilaterally desegregated the US military. Before, there were Black units and there were white units. They didn't fight side by side. After he signed this order, the forces were integrated, and actually my grandfather went to Korea and in an integrated unit. Brooke, I know people serve in the military where you're from. Can you tell us about a veteran that you know and what is their story?
Thank you. Well, actually, thank you for that question. My ex-husband was military, and that's why I got out here in America. We met in London at the embassy, and shortly after I moved over here to North Carolina, and then we ended up here in California. But I never had my grandfather, my grandfather, he served in the army, and he would spend some time over in Germany back in the day. And then my parent, when the first, I think that was like the Second World War, I believe so. I'm getting my dates mixed up. And then the First World War, my grandparents were a lot younger, so they would have to, they lived in around London, but when at that time, they got shipped away and they would have to live out in the countryside. So they would spend years away from their families to be safe from all the bombs. So I definitely aspire, and I still have a lot of military friends that I still keep in contact with today. So I inspire, and I'm very proud of all the work and them serving the countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Is there time for one more, Devin, or? All right. Dwight D. Eisenhower wasn't necessarily known as a champion of civil rights, that largely fell to the presidents who succeeded him. However, he did appoint a lot of very important people. I believe most importantly was Chief Justice Earl Warren, who ended up deciding the case of Brown versus Board of Education, which ended desegregation. Debbie, can you tell us about someone who maybe they didn't do a historical thing, but they put someone in place to do the right thing?
Wow. Thank you for that question. And since I'm going to aspire to answer that question, and since I'm completely blanking right now, I have to tell you that this has been an extremely interesting topic, and I've learned a lot listening. It's just interesting talking to everyone, hearing what everyone has to say. But as far as someone who put someone important, I'm going to think of a million like I always do after I'm done talking. But I'm sorry. Come on, Debbie, you could think of someone. Who is an important person? Okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait for Deanna to hold up something green. I'm going to bow out, but thank you guys.
Go on, you can say anything you want. Go on, baby.
I'm done.
Thank you, everyone. That was really great. It was some pretty tough questions. Thanks for participating, everyone.
Thank you, Charles. It's nice to get the wheels spinning in our head. All right, so let's get the reports. So Deanna will start with the timers. Did everybody qualify on time?
Okay, so the green light turns on at 45 seconds. And then the yellow goes at 1:15 and the red is 1:30 and you get disqualified at 1:45. So everybody passed. If anybody wants to know their number, just ask me privately.
Okay, great, thank you. And Brooke, did everybody use the word of the day?
I believe so. I don't know if Debbie, did you? I don't think Debbie did, or maybe she did. But everyone else did.
She did in the beginning. She did in the beginning.
Yeah.
Everyone did them.
Okay, great. All right, so in just a second, the vote ballot will come up. We're really only voting for table topics today. So look for that in just a second. And while that's happening, let's start the reports for the meeting. So Paul, we're going to start with the counter report, please.
Sure. Deanna, you only had one soap. Devin, I caught nothing. Lucille, 2 ums, 1 Xerox. Charles, 1 ah, 5 tisks, with just a little smack of the lips there. Let me vote, get this out of the way. Thank you. Brooke, you had 6 ums. Megan, 1 Angela's 4 ums. Pat, 1 ah, 1 you know, and 6 tisks, where you just kind of smack your lips. Debbie, nothing. Which is pretty cool because you stalled for 45 seconds there, and I didn't catch anything. So props to you. Stacy, 1 Corey, 5 ums. And Jesse, 1 That's it.
Great, thank you so much, Paul. And next we'll go with Brooke with the grammarian report, please.
Okay, so I really messed up. I did Paul's job. I got confused.
Did you catch anything?
Did you find any more? Did you find any more
I found a little bit more.
Okay, good.
But I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that.
Not a problem at all. You want any you missed that you want to share?
I know I saw that Angela's had about four or 5 likes. Yes, and that was whatever Paul said. I'm sorry.
No,
I know why
not a
she did that,
problem.
because I emailed her the log sheet, and the log sheet is an counter and a grammarian log sheet at
Yeah.
the same time. So that's why it's confusing. Yeah. So
Confusing.
sorry. Sorry.
We're all still learning.
Yeah.
All right, so next up, Megan, if you'd like to give us the watcher report, how did everybody look and sound today?
Well, I think that everyone has really learned how to use Zoom, and you know how to position yourself, and it's great. Pat, it was wonderful how you used your hands all throughout the speech. That was great. And Brooke, I don't know if, I mean, this isn't really just for Toastmaster. I mean, for some reason, if you have to hold a sign up to an employer or something, when you were holding up the word of the day, you held it up right in front of your face. And I just thought, if you have to hold up something for the employer, you know, you can present it or whatever. But that's it.
Thank you so much, Megan. And finally, Stacy with the general evaluator report, please.
Thank you, Devin. What a great meeting. I think everything started out wonderful. You started just a hair after 12, not too bad. And then my internet failed. I was picking up on my next door neighbor's internet. And so I had to spend about 5 minutes coming back on. So I apologize for that. I loved the speech that Pat gave because it was inspirational. It was a call to action. He had a great conclusion. He had great advice, and I think his stories were very interesting. So great speech. And the evaluator, Lucille, did a great job of helping him to know what to improve on and what went well. So good job, Lucille. And then Charles got very creative. And I love that he did the homework on the presidential thing. Those were great questions. I have not seen anything like that before. And I'm so proud of everyone because everyone was on time and everyone used the word of the day, which I think almost never happens. And so today was really a good day for table topics. What a great topic too. Other than that, I think we had a great meeting, and it's moving right along on time, and hopefully next week will be the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think you're right. That might be a record for table topics for us. So well done, everybody. And with that, we will award the best table topic speaker of the day goes to Corey. Congratulations, Corey. And that wraps up our meeting. So we'll hand it back over to Deanna. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good job, everybody. Excellent. And I echo everything that Stacy said. I did want to point out one thing. Pat, I really like that you stood for your speech. I think that's a good thing for all of us to practice when we have an opportunity to do our speech, to stand up and do it instead of sitting down, because we are way too comfortable sitting down with these Zoom meetings, and sooner or later we are going to get back in person. So we should start practicing now to stand up and do our speeches. Okay.
That's what I was trying to remember. Like, that's how we have to do it if we ever start back up again.
That's right. Yeah. So good job with that.
So true, Deanna.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
Anyone can sit and talk. Sitting and talking all our lives, but standing and talking is very different. That's a really good point.
That is true. It
And I
is
used to
different.
find-
Okay, everybody. I am going to click on the, whoops. I want you guys to fill out the roll sheet for next week. And if we can do it all remotely, do it on our own right now, that'd be great. And next week we have the 2 evaluating positions, evaluator 1 and evaluator 2, and we have joke master that's available. We also have a lot of spots the following week. So are you guys all able to click on that link?
I don't see it.
I don't see it.
You don't see the link? I
Yeah.
just chatted, I put it in the chat box. I'm sorry, it wasn't clear.
Oh,
Is there anybody that is not able to click on the chat link? We have Toastmaster and table topics for the following week on March the 5th as well. Okay,
Hey,
so
Deanna?
yeah.
Would I be able to go, I don't think I'm gonna have my speech ready, so could I change to table topics master instead, or Toastmaster instead of speaker?
Yeah, can you do that right now? Why don't you move your
Yeah, I can.
name?
Okay.
Yeah. So now we have speaker 1 available on March 5th. Now, do you know how to change the color of that box?
Me? Yes.
Okay, I'll let you change the color of that box to back to yellow.
Deanna?
Yes.
What about, we have a different meeting or link on March 5th?
Yeah. So thanks for noting that. 2 weeks from today, not next week, but March 5th, we're going to use a different web link. All this time that we're using the Zoom link, Devin has been very generous to allow us to use her professional Zoom link, and that's why we're able to be on here for over an hour. So thank you, Devin. We really appreciate that. So on March the 5th.
I thought March 5th was the next Friday. I'm sorry.
Okay, so March 5th, she's gonna be not here, so that's why we need to use a different link. So be on the lookout. We're gonna email a different link for you guys to use. Unless one of you guys have another professional Zoom link we can borrow. Does anybody have one? No, okay, so we'll have a different link. It'll probably be Ring Central, but be on the lookout for it. You'll get instructions on how to download it. And let's see, let's share my screen. See if you can see my screen. Share. Okay. Can you see the Pathways Progress sheet, you guys?
yes.
All right, thank you. Pat, you are almost done with your level 3. So congratulations there. We've got one more elective and you'll be done with level 3. And with that, anything?
Can I say something? I'm sorry, I'm always saying something.
We appreciate it. Come on, Lucille. Do it.
I want to emphasize that for those of you who have not taken advantage of the free path, please do that, because that is extended till December 31st. So for those of you who renewed in the October, I know we have a renewal coming, but for those of you who renewed in October, you can get a free path. If you can subscribe to that right now, you don't have to use it. You can bank on it. At least it's free. So I don't want to name names, and there are some of you who haven't been enrolled in Pathways. You know who you are. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks, Lucille. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to bring that up. So thanks. It's $20, right? $20. We can save $20, and you don't have to use it immediately. You might want to use it, I don't know, who knows, a year from now. So yeah, and dues are coming up. Actually, it's open right now. So if you do want to pay for your dues, that goes from April through September, please contact Mr. Barsh. So you can either send him a check or you can pay by credit card. If you pay by credit card, there's a $2 processing fee, and let him know and he'll email you an invoice. And once you click on that invoice, you input your own credit card number and then that works. So if we can get that all done by mid-March, that'd be awesome. Rather than waiting till the last minute, let's just all get it done. And that'd be one less thing we have to think about. Okay, and I think that is it. Those of you who are mentors, I think we're having a little meeting with our mentor director, Lucille. And with that, good seeing you guys. Enjoy the nice weather this weekend. Be safe out there. Have fun. Hug your loved ones. Ciao.